This is the Patriots Drive Podcast.
We are all Patriots.
Where we discuss, analyze, and answer questions to all things happening in the NFL and with our New England Patriots. Now, here's your host, Cole Kelly.
Let's go!
All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Patriots Drive Podcast. Guys, today we're joined by Colby from Patriots Global, doing a little mock draft here, man. I've done so many. I know Colby's done so many, so we're going to kind of do a little joint mock draft here between the two of us. Colby will probably take the first and third and fifth rounds, and so we'll alternate picks, right? So it's not like a joint mock draft. We each get to say our own say in each of the picks, but we'll let the final decision be alternating between both of us. So really appreciate having you on, Colby. I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, I think we did this, exactly a year ago today, or not today, but around this time. So, I mean, it was a great one last year. It's another great one. And anytime we're able to kind of hop on and talk some Patriots football, especially because I feel like I don't get, like I told you before we hopped on, that many fellow Patriots creators, people who are diehard just like me. So anytime I'm able to get, guys like you on the channel, I mean, it's an absolute dub. So I'm really excited for this one.
Oh yeah, I remember last year doing it. It was so fun because it's two Patriots fans, and obviously we try to do good content here. So we're trying to produce something that we think the Patriots could do, but also that we want the Patriots to do. So I'm glad we're doing it with 2 weeks before the draft, because I feel like there's a little bit more solid rumors and stuff that you can go off of than if we were to do it 3 months ago. So I'm excited for this, guys. If you don't follow Colby, I'm sure most of you guys are already subscribed to him on Patriots Global. Make sure you follow him here and both on Instagram. And then, of course, subscribe to the Patriots Drive Podcast. You can get all your Patriots news between both of us. We're both trying to kill it and getting both of you guys on there. So we're going to use PFF mock draft database, I should say. I keep calling it simulator because that's what it is. But we're going to be using that kind of go off of how we can kind of better it and, what we think the Patriots are going to be doing in this draft. So like I mentioned, we'll be switching back and forth. Starting off right here, though, you'll get the first pick. And, of course, we'll slow down, talk about this. We're not going to fly through this, talk about each pick, pretty much every scenario right here. So let's see how the board kind of falls for pick 3. I think should we restart this? This might be worst case scenario because Drake, Caleb Williams still on the board. We kind of got to respect the board, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously not going to be there. I mean, Jaden Daniels at 2 from what's being said. Adam Schefter has doubled down now twice, and he's told Washington fans, just go ahead and buy your jerseys for Jaden Daniels at this point. So, yeah. I mean, but obviously Caleb Williams, he's going number 1.
Okay, I'm going to restart this because I'm a big, I don't know how you do it. I think we need to respect the board in some way, right? Yeah, Caleb Williams isn't going to be there at pick 3. It's so fun to mock him there, but it doesn't do us any good as Patriots creators and you guys as Patriots fans if we're just taking Caleb Williams at pick 3, because it's most likely not going to happen. So
exactly.
Let's re-roll this.
That's like Jaden Daniels being there at 23. If that happens in real life, damn, that's great. But at the end of the day, that's not going to happen. We want to make this as realistic as possible for you guys, that come draft day, you know what to expect. You know who realistically is going to be there.
For sure. Okay, well, this one's a little bit different, but we can at least get what we want, right? Drake May goes number 1, which we could assume there, and then JJ McCarthy, which people have said there's a chance he goes pick 2. I don't believe that because I wouldn't do it, and I wouldn't take him at pick 3. But say Drake May and Caleb Williams do go off the board right here. We can use that as a logical scenario. Your pick, are you going to go Jaden Daniels? What's your thought process here if those two are off the board?
Yeah, so even with JJ McCarthy, I think it's interesting. I don't think he's going number 2. But it's funny, too, that he was invited to the actual draft and he declined it. He chose that he's just not going to go. So I wonder if he knows, everything that's being said about him is kind of just smoke being blown out there. And he knows, he's going to fall a little bit more than what's expected. And maybe he just doesn't want something like a Will Levis situation to happen where he goes there on day 1. He's expecting to be drafted, and then he doesn't get drafted that day, and he falls into day 2, and he's just sitting there with cameras on him being embarrassed. So that wouldn't surprise me. But as for the Patriots here, I don't know about you, but I believe that there's 3 blue chip players in this draft. I believe it's Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, to me, is the first, not even quarterback, but the first player that I fell in love with in this entire draft process. I don't feel like there is a player that has improved more in this draft on a year-to-year basis than Jaden Daniels has. Now, I will say that I do think Drake May fits the Patriots system a little bit better, right? Obviously throws inside the numbers a little bit better. I don't think that Jaden Daniels can. And I think that that's a little bit overblown. This idea that he's always thrown outside of the numbers. He's always thrown to his ex-perimeter receivers. But that's also kind of what his offense dictated. He had 2 first-round wide receivers on the outside. Of course, you're going to throw to your ex-receivers on the outside. You're not going to throw to the middle when you have guys like Brian Thomas out there, right? Like or Malik Neighbors. It just doesn't make sense. So, yes, coming to New England, Jaden Daniels is going to have to get more comfortable and have more experience throwing inside of the numbers and the middle of the field. But I do think that with experience, it'll come. And also, ideally for me, the Patriots aren't going to be starting their rookie quarterback week 1. I'm perfectly fine if they wait half a season or if they even wait a full season to play that rookie quarterback, because I'm thinking longevity. Yeah. I'm not thinking 2024, especially with how this team is currently built. So again, when you have a blue chip player on the board, whether that's Drake May or Jaden Daniels, I'm going to go with it. So I'm actually going to select Jaden Daniels here. I think that offensive tackle, wide receiver, the Patriots can still get those later, whether they trade into the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, even 4th round. But when it comes to quarterback, it obviously falls pretty significantly after those top tier guys.
Yeah. And listen, I am all for a Jaden Daniels at pick 3. Don't get me wrong here. Like, I think Jaden Daniels would be so exciting for the Patriots at pick 3. I agree with you, though. I have Drake May ahead of him. My blue chip prospects would be who I consider like my favorite: Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr., and then it would probably be Jaden Daniels after him. Now, I get it. We're not going to draft a receiver. That's a part of me that wants to, because I love Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's such a good player. I think he's going to be pretty much all pro guy every year once he gets in the league. But the Patriots are in a situation where they need to take a quarterback. That's why Jaden Daniels at pick 3 for me, I'm totally fine with. I have him ranked a little bit lower on my big board, but that's just because I think that I watched him growing up I'm on the West Coast, so I grew up watching Arizona State football. So I saw him for 3 years where he was good and then really bad. You saw the highs of the highs, the lows of the lows. Then last year, like you mentioned, he has 2 top 20 picks probably in this year's draft at receiver. And people are going to be asking, well, is that, because Jaden Daniels was so good, or were the receivers so good? So I don't have my concerns about Jaden Daniels. Obviously, he needs to get more strength. He's a little bit skinny, needs to add some muscle to his bone. But, man, he's so electric when he runs the ball. He has a great, beautiful, deep ball. He has good throwing mechanics. There's literally nothing you can't not like about him. The only thing I would say is that if it's coming down between Drake May and Jaden Daniels, which obviously I don't think it's going to, because one of them is going to be off by 2. I don't believe JJ McCarthy is going to be the 2nd overall pick. Then it's going to be whoever is available there. And I'm another Patriots fan that's kind of like, hey, I wouldn't mind a trade down, but I also realize we need a quarterback. And so Jaden Daniels at pick 3 for me is probably exactly what I do here. If the situation were to be Caleb 1, Drake May pick 2, which is what we're assuming here. Obviously, the mock draft's a little skewed.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And what I will say, too, is like Drake May, to me, I'm not as scared with Drake May. As well with Jaden Daniels, I'm like, you know what? You could be a top 5, maybe 7 quarterback in the league at some point with how good you throw the ball, and because you're able to create off script, which is one of the most important things to be able to do, right? You're mobile, and you have to be mobile to play the quarterback position in today's NFL. Unfortunately, just what it is. It's what it's become. Those pure pocket passing quarterbacks, they just don't make sense. They just don't stick around. But, what I will say too, like I said, there are a couple of concerns with Jaden Daniels. I do think that his arm strength is a little bit questionable. He has good accuracy. Deep accuracy is one of the best in this class, but his ability to fit it into tight windows is a little bit questionable. But I also think that comes down to his overall arm strength because of his size, right? He has the height to play quarterback, but it's his frame. He's going to need to put on weight. He's going to have to hit the locker room if he's going to be a mobile quarterback, and he's going to take hits, especially for a guy that doesn't like to go down, and a guy that doesn't like to slide, a guy that doesn't like to avoid the contact. So I do think that when he puts on that weight, he's going to be able to throw into tight windows a little bit better, because that arm strength is also going to come with it.
And I get the comps. I hate when people say that like Drake May is Daniel Jones, Mitchell Trubisky. I get it, guys. Some people want to scout him because he's an ACC guy. I think that coming out of college, when you look at scouting reports on Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, they were kind of like, hey, little rusty mechanics, big body, prototypical. I'm not saying that we can turn this guy into what those guys are. If you knew that Drake May would be Josh Allen or Justin Herbert type guys, he might be going the 1st overall pick. He'd definitely be going the 2nd overall pick. but he has those intangibles, right? We've seen guys like this coming out that are just big bodied, have a really strong arm, can throw the heck out of the ball. And Drake May's athleticism is so underappreciated. A lot of people look over it because of how good Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy is. Drake May can run. He is very, very good at running the ball. He has that bigger body, so he's going to be a little bit harder to bring down. I think that there's so many similarities that if he reaches his potential, could be Josh Allen, Justin Herbert type. And that's freaking exciting for the Patriots. Now, I want to ask you this because I have my opinions here, but a lot of people are mentioning what I just said. Take Marvin Harrison Jr. and Bo Nix in the second. Now, I think there's going to be 6 quarterbacks in the first round taken.
Ooh,
if you had to take Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr., who would you take? Say we take Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3, and then we go quarterback. Who would you want to pair with him?
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, there's obviously going to be a lot of quarterbacks that are going to go in the first round. To me, Bo Nix is not a first-round quarterback. I understand why a team might take him, but he's not a first-round quarterback in my mind, right? Like, he is a high floor, low ceiling guy to me. Pretty much, I feel like what you see is what you're going to get from him. And I'm not saying he's like Mac Jones, 'cause I think he's more mobile than Mac Jones, but I think overall, like, that's the type of guy you're going to get. Like, at best, he's probably going to be like the 11th or 12th best quarterback in the NFL, but is he ever going to crack the top 10? I don't know. Is he ever going to crack the top 5? Definitely not. I was never a big Bo Nix fan. I was always a bigger Michael Penix fan. Now, I understand there was concerns about the injury, and that's very, very understandable. But if it is checked out, right, if the NFL executives, if the doctors, if they all think that it's checked out, then I'm going to ultimately believe them. But 2, if you can get, let's say, 5 years out of an elite quarterback, and let's say Michael Penix becomes like a top 5 quarterback in the league, and he can excel you to get you to a championship and the potential at a Super Bowl, and you hit on the quarterback position, whether that's for 5 years or not, I'm going to take that over not JJ McCarthy, but Bo Nix, who maybe I'll get him for the next 10, 15 years. But again, he's only going to be at best like a top 12 quarterback in the NFL. So even me personally with the whole Marvin Harrison Jr. thing, I think that he is one of the most sure things in this entire draft class. I've said this from the beginning. He's basically being suited up for that gold jacket already. Like, there's no question about it to me. But this is such an amazing wide receiver class to where, yes, nobody's going to come close to where, let's say, a Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors are going to come, but it's still such a good class where you are still going to get yourself a good wide receiver 1 if you want, a good wide receiver 2. So even if the Patriots don't go quarterback at 3, I believe in trading down, right? Because you can still get, 11 or 10, and you can still get a game-changing player on the offense, whether that's at offensive tackle, whether that's at wide receiver, but you're also setting yourself up for the future. You're getting several first-round picks, and we saw this with Miami, and even we saw this with the Texans, to where you're able to use those first-round picks to get premier talent. Miami got Tyreek Hill. They got Jalen Ramsey with those first-round picks that they acquired. The Texans were able to kind of maneuver through the draft, trade back into the first round, trade up, and get the players that they wanted to. And I think that's much more valuable than staying pat at 3 and getting Marvin Harrison Jr.
I agree. And I'm I think I have a little bit more of a positive outlook on Bo Nix. I think he was in an offense that wanted to let him throw the ball quick outside. I think he can throw the ball. He has pretty good accuracy, pretty good arm strength. But I agree with you. I think that he's got the lowest ceiling of them all. If Michael Penix Jr. hits, if you can give him the pocket protection, I forget who it was that commented on it. Right here. If you can give him the pocket protection like that normal NFL quarterbacks have, he can throw the ball the best. He can freaking throw the deep ball, the intermediate. He has a great arm. He steps up in the pocket. He takes hits. The obvious question there are, can he hold up in the NFL because of his injury history? So I'm a little wishy-washy on that kind of thing there, but the trade down thing for me, as much as I'd love it, I agree with you. I think you got to find that quarterback that can give you a 5-year championship window on a rookie contract and build through that, through the draft that way. And obviously that means we have to draft even better in the second and third rounds because I think Kyle Duggar was the first guy that we've signed on a 2nd-year contract since, I don't even remember who, but it had been for 10 years. It had been forever since we had signed a guy to a 2nd-round contract. So
yeah, like that like top guy. And you know what?
Yeah, first pick.
I honestly believe that if Belichick was here, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like if Belichick was here, the amount of guys that we resigned would not be here, including Kyle Duggar. I honestly think that he would have let Kyle Duggar walk, and I feel pretty confident in that because he drafted Marte Mapu, who would be that exact replacement, right? Like Marte Mapu, I think could play linebacker, but it doesn't sound like that's where they think he's going to play. That's not where they're going to try him. But I also don't think that he's a free safety. He's not a guy that you want to play deep. He's a guy that's a box safety, a hybrid linebacker that plays best close to the line of scrimmage. And unfortunately, the Patriots now have a lot of those safeties, right? They have Marte Mapu, they have Kyle Duggar, they have Jabril Peppers, kind of like those question marks on how you're going to play all three of those. But I think that Kyle Duggar is such a good player that getting him back was a good move as long as you put him obviously where he was able to succeed in 2022. And big shout out here to Diehard Pats fan. I just saw this $10 donation. Let's go. Yes, we do have a 7-round mock draft collaboration. We're back at this again. Expect a lot more content here too with Patriots Dive. You know, you guys always love the content that we made last year. You guys always, kept hitting me up about it. So definitely going to make sure we continue to make content with him and get him more as a regular. Shout out to everybody else that's in the chat too, finally getting back to making content after being sick. So I appreciate everybody who tuned in to the live stream today and everybody that's tuning in from the AFC East Roundtable too. Appreciate you guys.
For sure. Guys, make sure you both subscribe to me and both subscribe to Colby. We're going to be having more joint stuff like this and the AFC East Roundtable. So let's take Jaden Daniels here. I'm going to let it roll to pick 34, which is where the Patriots will have their next overall pick. I'll kind of spearhead this one, and we'll talk about this. Okay, so I said at some point I want the Patriots to trade down. I get why it wouldn't be beneficial in the first round, right? Although you could get a haul of draft picks.
Absolutely.
But you mentioned how deep both the offensive tackle class is and the receiver class. So I'm going to take a look at what the board looks like, right? Obviously, if Amarius Mims is sitting here at 34, I'm not trading down because that's a generational talent right there. His size, he is incredible. So I'll probably end up sticking here, even though it might look a little unrealistic unless, maybe we want it. But let me go to the offensive tackle board, right? Like, I think we could trade down. Let's look at some of the trade offers we have here. Oh, let's see. Offers. Here we go. Okay. So you could trade down 4 picks, and you have a chance, in my mind, at probably still getting Kingsley Suamatia or Jordan Morgan, and you gain an extra 5th-round pick. You could trade down here. That's probably too far in my mind. That's almost 20 picks there. Trade down 2 and gain an extra 5th. So I get it, right? No one wants to trade down here because the board looks very good. But I think that at some point the Patriots want to maybe add 1 or 2 more picks. So it might not be bad trading back with like a Tennessee or someone getting an extra 5th-round pick. One, you can either use that as ammo to trade back up into like the 3rd or 4th round, or you can just stay there and get 1 extra guy because we have 19 roster spots to fill. I actually believe I heard you say that at one of your last videos you created. There's 19 roster spots. They only have 8 picks, so they're either going to have 11 UDFAs or they're going to have to fill this roster somehow. So I think getting more picks is something. What would you think about that? Now, I'm tempted just to take Amarius Mims here, right? Because it's unrealistic, but man, if he was here, I'm going to probably say that. But what would be your thoughts on maybe a trade down in the 2nd round, just a couple picks to gain an extra 1?
Yeah, I think you look at it. I mean, even Gerard Mayo during like the owner meeting kind of said that one of the best ways to hit on the draft is by having several draft picks, right? The more shots you take, ultimately, you're going to end up hitting on multiple players, right? It's kind of like a betting game, right? It's like you're at the casino and you're just kind of throwing shots at the board saying, all right, I'm going to put one here, put one there, put one there, and just hoping something hits. So I've been in the mindset of trading down from 34. That's something that I've done in mock drafts before too, because I think that's the perfect spot. Like you said, if you don't believe in one of the quarterbacks, trade in the 1st and then probably stay at 34. But understanding that they're probably going to take a quarterback with that 3rd overall pick, 34 is so valuable. And I feel like it's not talked about enough because I consider it a back end of the 1st round, right? Because this is the 2nd pick in the 2nd round. So a lot of these players that we projected to be 1st-round picks are now going to drop to the 2nd, and teams are going to panic and be like, we want this guy. We're going to trade up. We're going to offer you not necessarily the haul you would get at 3, but still maybe a bigger haul than you would expect for that 2nd-round pick. So to me, I think it comes down to looking at the board and saying, is there a player here that we view so highly that we expected to go on day 1, but ultimately fell, and we cannot trade down because this is going to be a player that is going to be a game changer for us year 1? Or you look at it and you say, you know what, there's so many good players here that we're going to trade down, acquire more draft capital, because we know that next time we pick in the 2nd round, there's still going to be high-end players that are still going to be available for us.
Yeah, and going into that point you just said, if Amarius Mims falls, he's the guy you can't trade down to pass up on.
Exactly.
If he's not there, I'd feel comfortable trading down, 6 to 8 picks, because I'd feel comfortable with any of Jordan Morgan, Kingsley Suamatia, Lad McConkey, Ricky Parasol, Xavier Legette. Like, there's going to be guys that, in my mind, if the Amarius Mims isn't there, you can trade down, and I'd feel comfortable getting any of those, either a tackle or a receiver. You address one of those positions, and then you gain an extra pick, and then you probably just address the other one that you didn't address in the third round. So here, I mean, do we want to respect the board? Because I don't see there's any way Amarius Mims falls, right? Like, you talked about guys that are falling. It may be a Tyler Guyton type of guy, but in my mind, not an Amarius Mims, right? This guy might be a top 20 pick.
Yeah, Amarius Mims is absolutely insane. I mean, even his size and whatnot, playing at Georgia with the competition level, like, he's not going to definitely drop to the second round. I also think that there's going to be a run on tackles in the first round, because I think that there's that first batch of offensive tackles that are like elite, but like after that, there's a pretty significant drop off from like that first batch to kind of the rest of the draft too. As well with wide receiver, there's a lot of great wide receivers, but you're going to get game-changing players in like the third and the fourth round that can be, number one wide receivers for you. We've seen it with the Houston Texans. So I think that tackles are going to go much quicker, which is why even in my mock drafts before, I've usually taken like offensive tackles in the second. But at the end of the day, there's 3 players there that I like, right? Number one, Kingsley Suamatia has left and right side versatility, which I think is going to make him a guy that has his hit potential so much higher because he can play on both sides. Jordan Morgan, who I really, really like. I think he's a high-end left tackle, but obviously some question marks with his arm length and his size. Is he going to be a guard at the next level or not? I don't buy into that as much. I think his arms are like an eighth of an inch short or something like that. But then you can even maybe get a guy late second round, earlier third round, Patrick Paul, who is another great starting left tackle. So there's definitely options there.
Yeah. So I'm going to trade. I'm going to agree with, HB Grimmer right here says, why would we trade down for a fifth and a higher second, right? If we're trading with Tennessee, I get they don't have a third round pick, but they say that they will still accept this with a fourth round pick, which I think is a little bit more realistic, right? You're going to move down only 4 spots. We'll get an extra fourth round pick there. I'm going to make this trade just assuming that Amarius Mims probably isn't going to be here come draft day. So we're going to be able to take this. We're going to make this trade down here. Somehow he's still there. And Jordan, this is why, look, Suamatia and Jordan Morgan go, right? So if this happens, you pivot to receiver. I'm a big Lad McConkey guy. I'm a big Ricky Parasol guy. I get why people want a guy like Xavier Legette, because with Devontae Parker being cut and not here anymore, now you got to find a true X receiver. So if this was the receiver board, is there a guy you're leaning towards more than other? I would probably go McConkey here in my mind. Would you go Legette, or where do you stand?
Yeah, so, you see guys like Xavier Worthy here, and people are going to be like, dude, that's like the fastest receiver in NFL history. I'm like, you know what? I'm hearing Tyquan Thornton. I'm hearing, what was his name? Ross a few years ago that played for the Bengals. John Ross played for the Bengals. Like, speed doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to hit, although I do know speed kills. Plus, you already do still have, Tyquan Thornton on the field. So I feel like if you draft Xavier Worthy, that's just the writing on the wall that Tyquan Thornton's out of the building. And I don't know if they're ready to do that just yet. I don't think that he makes a whole lot of sense for the Patriots. Ricky Parasol is a guy that I do like, but I wouldn't say he's one of my like top favorite guys. And I kind of see him more as like an Adam Thielen, a guy who plays a little bit more in the slot. Not saying he can't play outside, but maybe more in the slot. I'm big fans of Roman Wilson and Lad McConkey. I just think that they are more slot receivers, like those more undersized slot receivers, than they are consistent outside perimeter X guys. So like me personally, when I'm looking at these receivers, whether I'm taking a guy in the second, the third round, maybe going a little bit later to double up at wide receiver, I'm always trying to look at the Patriots adding at a very specific type of wide receiver, because I think a lot of people don't understand that there's a difference of wide receivers in the league, right? It's not just, I need a wide receiver, I'm going to take any wide receiver. That's like saying, I need a right tackle, but I'm going to take any tackle, and now this guy plays on the left side, and that's not what I needed, right? The Patriots need a big body X receiver who can, catch those contested catches. They've always had that guy in the building. Not many of them, but they've always had that guy in the building. Whether it was Josh Gordon, then they tried N'Keal Harry, then they tried Devontae Parker. There's always been that big guy on the outside, whether they've hit or not. And right now, I don't think they necessarily have that. I do think that guys like Kendrick Bourne can catch those contested catches a little bit better than I think some people kind of give him credit for. But I think we have a lot of those like undersized, like 6 foot to 6'1" max receivers to where maybe you look to get a little bit taller. But again, if they go Wilson or McConkey, I'm not worried. Like I know they're going to hit at the next level, but how are they gonna, get everybody on the field at the same time? Because you do have Pop Douglas, who's pretty much strictly a slot receiver.
Yeah, and that's the thing is we're built up of so many slot receivers right now, and I feel like there's in the second, third, and fourth rounds, there's probably a little bit more of guys that are fit the slot and can play outside, but are more of those slot type receivers. I'm a big fan of Javon Baker, but obviously he'd be a third or fourth round guy. He just had a Patriots top 30 visit, right? I read that. Yeah. So that's a guy that we could look at as the bigger bodied guy. If I'm staying true to my board and I'm going receiver here, right? Because we still don't believe Amarius Mims is here. If Kingsley Suamatia or Jordan Morgan were on the board, I would have taken one of them. We already traded down to get an extra pick. I'm going to stay true and I'm going to take Ladd McConkey. I think that he is a guy that consistently gets open. He has great hands. He can run pretty much any route in the route tree. I know he fits more of the slot type of role, but he ran a 4.39. He's quick, short area burst. He's quick, long speed. He can play as a Z. And then now you just have to find a true X type of receiver on the outside. So I'm going to stick true to my board because I don't mind Xavier Legette, but I probably wouldn't take him until the third round. So I got to stick true to my board. So I'm going to take Ladd McConkey here.
I do think too, like Ladd McConkey is going to hit. Like I honestly wouldn't be surprised if you're sitting at 31 or 32 and the 49ers or the Chiefs actually take Ladd McConkey. That wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. I love Ladd McConkey. He's not just fast, but the dude's quick too. So he's going to get open and he's going to get open fast where, there's going to be questions about the offensive line. But at the end of the day, I mean, you look at Joe Burrow, what was that, 2021, where they went to the Super Bowl, had one of the worst offensive lines in the league, but they had guys that were just getting open at the receiver position, so it didn't matter. You can kind of combat that for a year if you need to. And, Ladd McConkey, like I said, he's not going to give the Patriots that height advantage that I do think they need, but maybe you double up at wide receiver. Maybe, that's not super realistic, but maybe they go wide receiver in the second and the third, or maybe they, take a tackle in the third, but then trade back into the third to get another wide receiver, something like that. Ladd McConkey is only 6 foot, but interesting fact is that, with Georgia, he played 118 snaps out wide, but only played 32 in the slot. So believe it or not, despite the size, Ladd McConkey is still mainly utilized as this outside receiver.
Yeah. Yep. And that's what people And I feel like even more nowadays, it's not so much about in the olden days, you used to see true 6'3" guys on the outside. Well, that doesn't mean that they have to play on the outside anymore. Puka Nacua was a great outside receiver last year. It's just because he can get open, he can run any route tree. And then with that position versatility, now you line him and Cooper Kupp up on the same side and have one at the slot and one there. You're running switch routes. You're running a bunch of different things. It messes with coverage. I think the Patriots, in my mind, they just need good receivers. We haven't had a good receiver in years to say, hey, we need an X now. We just need a good receiver, in my opinion. And I think Ladd McConkey's a good receiver. So I'm gonna go with Ladd here. Trade down, get an extra hit on. Yeah, exactly. I like him. I like him a lot. So that's gonna bring you up to pick or in the third round, right? So we already made a trade here. So I'll close this down unless you want to look at it again. But what position are you kind of thinking here? Pick 68 after we go Jaden Daniels, Ladd McConkey, first 2 picks.
Yeah, so I'm thinking you probably look at offensive tackle here. Ideally, you can try to get a guy here, kind of hit on those top 3 needs that they have. So I think this is a little too early to go with, somebody like Javon Foster. I do like Javon Foster, but I don't know about Javon Foster here.
I really like him in the 4th or 5th.
Did you see Roger Rosengarten? I forget who it has. I think it was somebody from NFL Network who had him go back end of the first round.
Really? I have not seen that mock yet.
It was the dumbest thing, but I guess, you need clicks at this point. Blake Fisher, I do like him, but he's specifically a right tackle. I'm a Gaji. I believe that's how you say his name. I'm not great with some of the names in this class, but I think I'm saying that guy's name right. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know how to say it either, so don't ask me.
I believe that's how you say it.
It's something like that.
I'm gonna stay away from saying it as much as possible. He's a guy that I do like. He's if I believe here 6'5". He's somebody who has a lot of experience over on the left side. He's pretty much only a left tackle, has some experience as a left guard too. So he fits a position where you need, right? He's a left tackle, but he's not going to necessarily give you any experience over on the right side. So you know where he's going to be. Maybe a little bit undersized in terms of offensive tackle play, but nothing I'm too worried about. I think he needs more experience. Like, I don't think this is a guy you're going to plug in day one as your left tackle, but he has those developmental traits that you do like. Just needs more experience playing out the position. Looking at him here, he played 4 games at left tackle this past season, 10 in 2022 and 10 in 2021. Just very, very unexperienced, I think, overall is your concern, but showed so much promise. So I think that's definitely a possibility. Like, I don't know. They could go edge here and they could address the defensive line, but I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of them going defense this early on. I would understand why they would, but I think you have so much needs offensively to where if you want to start going defense in like the 4th round, okay, but those top 3 picks, I would say keep it offense. I don't know what your kind of thought process is though there on that.
Well, I thought it was going to be they went 3 straight defensive guys last year too, and I thought at least 1, if not 2 of them were going to be offensive guys. So I think in this year, it's even more important that you get 3 offensive guys, because I think a lot of people expect the Patriots defense to be top 10, if not top 5 in the NFL again. Like, they're going to be good. Matt Judon's coming back. Gonzalez is coming back. Like, you have a lot of returning starters coming back. Sione Takitaki has high hopes. I think they expect the defense to be good. So I think you have to go there. I'm a fan of Kieran Amagaji if he's here. Who was it? Sorry, I'm missing all these ones. Specta D says all these tackles are certified 2-year projects now. Well, I think that's the reason the Patriots are probably not going to be very good next year again. And I get it. They re-signed a ton of really good players. They kept a lot of good players home, but you didn't bring in a lot of outside talent. I didn't feel like they addressed one of their needs in the long run in free agency. They didn't get a long-term receiver. They got Jacoby Brissett, but not a long-term quarterback because you expect him to do it in the draft. And you didn't really get a long-term tackle other than Owenu. You sign Chuck Okorafor, which I think they're pretty high on, but most of these guys in the 3rd round, whether you go receiver or offensive tackle, probably aren't going to be huge contributors year 1 unless you get lucky and just hit it out of the park. So I think they feel fine with Okorafor at left tackle for this year. And then you take a guy like Kieran Amagaji and you sit him for a year and let him develop, because Okorafor is probably not going to be the long-term guy. So yeah, he hasn't had that high level experience, but you bring him in, he has the intangibles, he has all the size that you want him to. You let him develop for a year with a good offensive line coach and get an NFL experience and strength. I think he could be in year 2 a really good left tackle. So yeah, he's going to be a project, but I have no problem taking him here in the 3rd if that's what they want to do. And they feel like Okorafor is probably the answer for this year. I don't know if he's the answer for the long term, but for this year, he might be. And although it's scary because I think the O-line might be one of the biggest needs they need to address because it was so bad last year, they might be kicking that can down the road and they might have already filled it with a bridge player like Chuck. So that's kind of my thoughts on the left tackle position. I'm fine taking, like you said, Blake Fisher, more of a right tackle, but he's going to be a developmental guy. Rosengarten's also probably more of a right tackle. Christian Jones too. Javon Foster would be a great guy in the with one of the 4th round picks since we acquired an extra one, but he's going to be in the same boat as Kieran Amagaji. Like, they're going to be 2-year probably prospect type tackles, right? You're going to have to build them up. And so I'm fine taking Amagaji here. I think it's the biggest need at this point right now, and he's got the highest potential. So I have no problem with that, if that's what you would say.
Yeah. And the thing too about like Amagaji, compared to like Javon Foster is I would say that, Javon Foster has more experience compared to Amagaji. But the thing too is like Amagaji has performed as well as he did in limited games, in limited reps, and he's raw still. Now, just imagine as you develop him a little bit more, just how good he's going to be. Like, he's ahead of Javon Foster for a reason, and that is still with limited tape. Like you said, Blake Fisher, great player, but he is a right tackle, and the Patriots don't really need that. Rosengarten, like you said, too, he's going to be a right tackle, and I'm not necessarily against the Patriots taking a right tackle because I don't know about you, but I want to see the Patriots getting back to a philosophy that they used to truly believe, and that was putting players in the position that they succeed the best in. And 2 players that really fit that realm of possibilities for me is at some point getting Michael Onwenu back to right guard. I think he's a good right tackle, and he can get the job done very well. But if you're trying to get the best out of Michael Onwenu, it's at right guard. He is going to be one of the best guards in the entire National Football League. I mean, in 2022, he didn't allow a single sack till like week 17 or week 18. That's how good he plays at guard. I think trying to get him back there at some point is a smart move. I also think that getting Jonathan Jones back to playing slot cornerback rather than outside perimeter cornerback, I think is also getting your players back in a position to succeed. So I'm not against them taking right tackle at some point in the draft because, I mean, hey, then you have Michael Onwenu at right guard. You have this new guy at right tackle, David Andrews at center. You put City So over at left guard, which is where he originally played, but you still have this question over at left tackle. Left tackle is obviously a much bigger need, and if they can hit that, then I think that's obviously the place that you have to go, and I think that Amagaje is definitely that guy.
Yeah, I agree with you. A little bit on the Onwenu thing. I think a lot of people want him at right guard too. I think Isaiah Wynn was played at left tackle for way too long. I thought he's the guy they should have bumped into guard. I have no problem with, because we knew Isaiah Wynn struggled, right? Like we knew he was bad. Michael Onwenu has been an all rookie. He was an all rookie right tackle, and he's been the best offensive lineman on this team for probably 2 years at right tackle. Like I get it. He would probably be an all pro guard, but he's shown us that he can play right tackle. He can be a good right tackle. And I think it's harder to find good right and left tackles than it is to find right or left guards, especially after you take Antonio Mafi, Sidney Sow, Cole Strange, and Jake Andrews all in the span of 2 drafts. So you took 4 interior guys. So I get it. I want him. I think it would be maybe the best for the long run, but he's shown that he can play right tackle. And so I have no problem with him playing right tackle. You got to figure out the left tackle position. So I agree with you. You're good with taking Kieran right here out of Yale?
Yeah, and even you touch on your point, I think it also kind of comes down to like what happens with Cole Strange, right? Because if Cole Strange does work out, then you know what? City So over at right guard, he was very good when he was given the opportunity. Keeping Michael Onwenu at right tackle, because like you said, it is hard to come upon tackles. And you know, for the longest time, I was on kind of your side of things where I was like, just keep him at right tackle. He's good enough and it's hard to come across tackles. But if maybe somebody like Cole Strange doesn't work out, then you're like, okay, we're gonna have to bump City So over there, Michael Onwenu at right guard, and then you kind of figure things out. But that's all dependent on if you hit on these tackles first, right? Like you're not gonna move Michael Onwenu back into right guard and say, now we need help at both sides of the tackle position. That's not going to happen. So, but, you know, you address left tackle. I think ideally Chuks Okorafor plays as a right tackle. That's where he's played his entire NFL career. But I do think, unfortunately, with where their holes are at, they are going to have to play him over on the left side. He hasn't really done so since college. So he has some experience. I think it's just very limited experience. Hasn't done so in a very long time. But bringing back Michael Onwenu, like he's going to at least play tackle this upcoming season.
Totally agree with you. So there's our first 3 picks. Colby, I'm going to let you read this since this is dono for you. So go ahead, all you.
My man Gerard back at it again. Gerard, I appreciate you for being here today, but also appreciate you for being in the chat during the AFC East streams every Wednesday at around 7:30, 8 o'clock. Really appreciate you for all your support, man. You said, let's go Pats 100%. Thanks for going into the physical aspects with background history on each player and how they win or lose. I understand some fans want us to trade up and get that offensive tackle. Gerard, I appreciate you. And you know what? That's what I believe in doing. So we did a mock draft for all of the AFC East teams this past Wednesday on the AFC East roundtable. And somebody left a comment. They were like, Kobe talks too much. And I was like, dude, what do you want me to do, dude? Like, we're talking about these players. I'm going to break down the do's, the don'ts, the whys, and not just be like, all right, so we're going to select Spencer Rattler here, and that's my pick. Moving on. That doesn't make sense. That's just like throwing darts at a board and saying, I'm just going to pick this guy just because. You know, you got to show you know the information. You know, our point here is to teach you about these guys, right? Teach you about the possibilities and who these guys ultimately are at the NFL level. So I appreciate you, Gerard, for that $10.
Perfect. All right. So now we're on to the 4th round, guys. We have pick 103 and 106 because we did make a trade in the 2nd round. So first thing I'm going to look at is wide receiver. Honestly, if Javon Baker was here, I'd be really tough to pass on him. But Malik Washington, Malik Washington's not a guy I want to take. Johnny Wilson's too slow, in my opinion. So I'm going to pivot to look at corners, and I'm going to look at safeties. Now, Cam Kitchens is a guy that jumps off to me. I don't know if he's going to be there. This is the guy that I've always taken in the 4th round, Old Mad Mob. I think that Cam Hart, but you just mentioned it, right, with John Jones, right? John Jones is probably ideally, him and Marcus Jones in the slot is probably better in my mind than having John Jones on the outside. So if you get a guy like Cam Hart, who I thought tested very well for his size and has played a lot of really good reps at Notre Dame, would be huge to add to him and Gonzo on the outside with John Jones and Marcus Jones on the inside. So I'm going to just go straight. I'm not going to make this any harder. I know you said you like him. I'm going to just take Cam Hart right here. This for me is a 4th round pick I've made probably 3 or 4 times in my mocks. I'm going to do it again here. I'm going to take Cam Hart here, and then you're going to be up in, just 3 picks right now. So what do you think of the Cam Hart pick?
Dude, I absolutely love it. I mean, like you mentioned, Kitchens, and I think that's a possibility because I do think that Kitchens is able to play deep. Like, he'll be able to play free safety in the NFL. That's what the Patriots need. The Patriots don't need any of these slot safeties or box safeties. They don't need any more of those guys. They need a guy who's going to be able to play deep and really fit into that McCourty role that was really a big issue for them this past year. I mean, sometimes with the blown coverages, the big plays that they let up in the passing game, that all came because of issues of not having a guy that could consistently play deep. And they tried so many bodies there, Jalen Mills, Kyle Duggar, Peppers, like you name it, they tried it and it just didn't work out. I do think that at some point they need to get that guy, but they did sign a free agent, a free safety free agent not too long ago. I'm not big on him necessarily, but if they're just trying to get by for the year, I think he's a guy that can definitely play there. Cam Hart is a guy that is going to be able to be that cornerback 2 for you. Is he ever going to be a cornerback 1? I don't know, but also it really doesn't matter if he's playing here because you have Christian Gonzalez. And I think that when you have a guy like Christian Gonzalez who's able to lock down that number 1 guy, it makes Cam Hart's job so much easier. And the interesting thing is that NFL defenses, they either have a great defensive line to get to the quarterback to where they don't need a great secondary, or they have a great secondary to where it gives their defensive line, a couple more seconds to try to get to the quarterback. If you have both, that makes it pretty much nearly impossible to have any type of offensive success to where even the top end offenses like the Bills or the Chiefs, you can pretty confidently hold them to 10 points. And again, that's where your offense comes in and you're just like, you know what, score 13 points. That's all you need. And that's how you're going to win games. Cam Hart, a big outside cornerback. I believe he's like 6'2". He gives you the height that you need. He immediately becomes the biggest cornerback on the Patriots roster. I think he is a little bit more of a zone cornerback, but at the same time too, he's not bad in man whatsoever. And we saw last year that while the Patriots are still more of a man defense, they're not scared to put in a little bit more zone too. So I love this pick. Had a great offseason. I wonder if honestly, I hope he would be here and it won't shock me if he is, but I wonder if a team says with his size, with his ability, how he tested out the combine and the Senior Bowl, because he was one of my biggest winners there. I wonder if they say, we're going to take him a little bit earlier. I hope not, but it also wouldn't surprise me if that happens.
Yeah,
big Cam Hart fan, dude.
He was 6'3", 202 at the combine. He ran a 4.5. That's going to be this knock, right? He doesn't have that true straight line speed, but like you mentioned, he's not going to be guarding number 1. So we have Christian Gonzalez for that. This is another guy. Brian says, I agree with you. A free safety is a huge need for the Patriots. So a guy like Cam Kitchens is great. I took Kalen Bullock a couple of weeks ago in the 3rd round because he's a rangy corner. He's not very good in the run game, but yeah, would be awesome. So I love Cam Hart here. That's where I think the biggest need on defense is, or interior defensive line. So now you're up though at pick 106. Do you stay defense or do you go offense?
I think it's interesting because, you get help in the secondary. Is this where you go ahead and you look at edge? Because I think that's a real possibility. I think New England can look at edge a little bit earlier on just because they do kind of have a need there now. They have some questions. Obviously, Matthew Judon in contract year, they already have to adjust his contract. It came out not too long before we hopped on the air that he is looking to have his contract readjusted. It sounds like he's not going to hold out, at least in the early stages of the offseason. But we know that he held out last year during training camp until that contract was readjusted. So knowing he's coming off of a season-ending injury, knowing that you have, again, Matthew Judon in contract year, Josh Uche in contract year, your 2 best pass rushers, do they look to go edge early on? Maybe. I like Javon Salmon. Another guy's name who I don't pronounce very, very well, but again, I do think it might be a little early for him, but also you might have to sometimes take a player a little bit too soon rather than hoping you're going to get a player a little bit too late. So I do think that this is an option, but I'm also wondering if you try to look at wide receiver and you double up at wide receiver, or if you even look at tight end and do they try to draft a tight end now? Because I do think taking a tight end somewhere between like rounds 4 and 5 is very, very possible.
Yes. I thought a tight end last year was going to be something because you knew both guys
Great
were
tight end class too.
Yeah, it was good. And Theo Johnson tested well. I like Down Holker a little bit later. Going back on the edge thing, have you watched Mo Kamara out of Colorado State? Or are you
I've watched a
familiar with
little
him?
bit of him. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
so this
slightly
guy
familiar with him.
this guy was top 5 in college football in sacks. He had 14 sacks last year. And he was the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year, 24 tackles, 262 run stops. He's a little bit undersized, right? 6'1", 248, but he ran in the 95th percentile. Same with all of his jumping. He's very explosive. Like, this seems like a guy that the Patriots with Bill Belichick would want to kind of want to take, but has production getting after the passer. He's been very good and a pretty dominant conference too at the group of 5 level. He has pretty good power, even though he's undersized. Like he actually has a good bull rush. So I agree. I thought edge was kind of like one that they would look at, but then they re-signed Jennings, they re-signed Uche, obviously Keon White, Judon coming back. Then I thought, well, maybe his interior defensive line. So I'm good with any of the picks here. Tight end, any of these. So who are you leaning towards right now?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you obviously just sold me on the edge rusher too. A little bit about Javon Salmon too. He's coming out of Troy, so like the competition level isn't necessarily high, but I mean, this dude is a premier edge rusher that I feel like nobody's talking about. He put up an overall PFF grade this past year of 90.8, which is absolutely absurd. He had 17 sacks for Troy this past season. Absolutely absurd. Like, this dude runs with his hair on fire, super electric, gets to the quarterback quick. Only problem is that he's undersized. I think he's like 6 foot, 6'1" around there. He's just an undersized guy. And I think that's kind of where some of the concerns come a little bit more from. So I think they could go edge rusher here in the 4th, and it would make a lot of sense. A guy that, you know, you don't necessarily have to play year 1, but you're hoping can develop. And by year 2, he'll be able to be unlocked and he can replace a Josh Uche, or, you know, maybe he can replace the role of a Matthew Judon if that's the role they decide to go. But I also think that there's some really, really good tight ends here. And yes, you have Hunter Henry signed on a 3-year deal, but we know that Alex Van Pelt loves his tight ends. He loved David Njoku. He loves to implement those guys and make sure they're utilized, especially because the Patriots, and ironically, Alex Van Pelt with the Cleveland Browns and with the Green Bay Packers, they love to operate in the middle of the field. They love to use their tight ends up the seam. So with that being said, do they kind of want to have some depth there at tackle to where Austin Hooper is also only signed on a 1-year deal? I think that is a possibility. So who do we have over at tight end, just out of curiosity?
Yep. There you go.
So
Jared Wiley, he was a top 30 visit, right, for the Patriots?
Yeah, he just visited them. Theo Johnson, they never take Penn State. I'll be curious to see if that changes now that there's like, you know, new people running the ship here. I'm a big Theo Johnson fan. I mean, this is like a big 6'6" dude, is a true receiving threat, hard to take down, needs to work on his blocking. So he's a little bit more developmental, but he's absolutely absurd. I mean, Eric All, Iowa just produces tight ends too. That's a little bit tough. Who else do we have on the board, just out of curiosity?
Let's see.
So they could always go 5th round. Trey Knox. Did they I forget who they met with a tight end the other day too.
Oh, Jaheim Bell out of Florida State.
Jaheim Bell, did he already go?
He went a pick before.
He went a pick before.
He went to the Chargers.
The Chargers too.
Yep.
He's honestly a guy that this early on though in the 4th, like I don't know if I like him that early. I feel like he's like more of like a mid to later 4th, early 5th round pick, but that's okay with him. So you know what? I think let's get the chat involved a little bit more here. What do you guys think? Do you guys want to go edge here? We obviously broke down those guys, or do you guys want to go tight end here? Do we go with the Jared Wiley? Do we go with the Theo Johnson? You guys let us know. First votes obviously is what we're going to roll with: edge rusher or tight end.
I like it. Yep. Guys, let us know down below, and you guys will kind of have this pick towards us, because I think this is kind of where you look at this and you're like, hey, they could go anywhere here, right? You address the 3 main needs in my mind: quarterback, receiver, offensive tackle. Cam Hart goes as a cornerback. They're one of the better defensive ones. Now it's like, do you want to address the tight end position because you don't have really anyone under contract? So yeah, it looks like, let's see.
Everybody's tight end.
I'm seeing tight end. I'm seeing 3 Theos. I see a Jared Wiley. I see a Mo Kamara. Javon. I'm guessing this is Javon Baker. He is not still there. No.
I'm seeing Brady. Bring Tom Brady back after he said he wants to,
bring him back. We got to get him at pick 199 though.
Exactly. That makes more than enough sense. You know what? I think that they're going to have a lot of cap space next year, right? Like they already were projected to have some of the most both in 2025 and 2026. They have like $50 million still to spend. They're probably going to roll a lot of that money into next year, which is going to just help our cap space for 2025 even more. I think that if edge rusher just doesn't bode well for them, in 2025, and they say, you know what, Josh Uche's gone, you know what, Matthew Judon's gone, they could probably target a guy in free agency. I don't think they're going to be a great team next year. They're going to have like a higher to mid pick next year too, to where they can probably just get edge rushers then too. You obviously do still have Keon White, who's a second-year player. You hope that he's going to pop off a little bit more. You have Dietrich Wise, guys who can still get the job done here. It sounds like the chat wants to go tight end here. I think that this should be a offensive heavy-minded draft anyway. So you know what? Let's have some fun. They get their developmental guy who is going to be their tight end 3. And you know what? Maybe the guy performs so well in camp that they say, we don't need Austin Hooper anyway. And he immediately clocks in as your tight end 2. So what are you thinking? You thinking Theo Johnson? I've drafted him so many times. Do we want to do Theo, or do we want to go with somebody different?
So
everybody's saying Theo.
I'm more familiar with Theo. Obviously, I knew Jared Wiley from the Senior Bowl and stuff. Like, I'm more familiar with Theo Johnson. I think he tested very well. He to me, he fits better next to Hunter Henry, right? Hunter Henry is that true inline guy that can run routes. Theo Johnson is and a guy that I loved last year coming out of Old Dominion. He was actually a Penn State guy, was Zach Kuntz. I think Theo Johnson and Zach Kuntz, a little bit bigger type of guy, could fit in a Gesicki role. I really like him, and I think that he still can run block, decent. He's not going to run block like Tip Raymond is out of Illinois, but I think he's good enough to be a 12 personnel run blocker. So I would say Theo Johnson.
Yeah, you know what? I've talked about him so much, but I've talked about him for a reason. Massive Theo Johnson fan, and you know what? I'm just hoping that they at least meet with him, right? Like, let's make this realistic. We all love him, so at least meet with him to make it at least a possibility for us.
Let's do it. I agree. Okay, so let's take Theo there. So we have our first 5 picks in the board, and we're going into the 5th round right here. Try to speed this up just a little bit. We still have 4 picks left. We've been going. Appreciate, again, everyone here. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, comment, both of our channels, so you can get all of your guys' Patriots news and updates right there. So, gosh, this is tough, right? So we've taken mostly offensive heavily. You could look at double dipping at offensive line. Okay, now Christian Jones is a right tackle. You can take him. There's a couple late round guys that I like. I've taken Frank Crum before in like the 6th. I really like him because of how he ran, his size. I think he's an underrated guy. A position that I don't know how you feel about it. I think running back, and I love Ramondre Stevenson. I just don't know how they view him. Like, how do they view him as a guy that they're going to give a second contract to? And I think that there's bigger bodied backs on here, like the one out of Notre Dame, Audric STM, Ray Davis out of Kentucky, Isaac Garendo, who ran a 4.39. I like some of these backs here. So I'm going to be tempted to take a running back here. What are your thoughts on the running back position?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it wouldn't surprise me if they do take a running back, especially because Highsmith, who's kind of running, or at least helping out their front office there, one of the best positions. I mean, he finds late round gems, but one of the best positions he finds those gems in is the running back position. And I haven't necessarily drafted a running back. I think I drafted actually one when I did one on Bleacher Report. But other than that, I don't think I've taken much running backs. I do want to familiarize myself more with the running back class because I really do think they're going to take one. But obviously, wherever they take one, that guy's probably not going to play too much this season. Probably more of a depth guy. So what are we in round 5?
5. Yep.
Yeah, we're in round 5. So this is pretty realistic. I think rounds 5 to 7 is where they would take a running back. Like I said, probably not going to play that much this season. But if they don't think that Ramondre is going to be the guy that they give that second contract to, where they're worried about kind of the injury that he's coming off of, maybe you get some stability there. And I do like Antonio Gibson, but he's more of that receiving threat. He's a little bit more bigger, a little bit more elusive, a little bit more speed. If you want an insurance policy behind Ramondre, you kind of want that guy who's just going to run through a mother effer. A guy that I've mocked to the Patriots in like the 6th or 7th. I don't know how you feel about him. I definitely wouldn't take him here, but like Frank Gore Jr., not a lot of speed at all. He's not fast. He's not going to hit second gear, but like he just sheds tackles and runs through people.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he's a tough runner. I would like if he's a 6th or 7th round guy, then I would definitely take him. My favorite
he's
running
definitely
back
not here.
on the board right here is Notre Dame's Audric Estime, 5'11", 221 pounds, built like a bowling ball. Okay. He ran a 4.71. So like you mentioned, like not the fastest, but they just eliminated the hip drop tackles. Yeah, everyone wants the speed and stuff, but
Yeah.
this guy forced 892 yards after contact. That was the 7th most in college football. He also forced he forced 64 missed tackles, which was top 20 in the country. He's very elusive. He runs people over. He runs hard. He's a bigger bodied back. I like SDM out of Notre Dame, so I'm going to take him as that bigger bodied back. I think he runs harder than Ramondre too. Like Ramondre is big, but he's more decisively elusive in the hole. It's kind of weird.
Yeah,
I want a guy that can just run, like you said, run through a mother effer's face. So I'm going to take SDM right here. I'm going to take him here and get a little bigger bodied back for them.
I like that. I mean, even Ramondre too. I feel like when he's breaking tackles, it's not like Damian Harris would take 5 guys with him to the goal line.
Yes.
He's not necessarily like that. Ramondre is stiff arming guys. He's elusive, right? So he's quick. So I definitely think that's a really good pick, a good change of pace. And I think you mentioning the hip drop tackle is another great point. And that's something that I've kept in mind when even doing my mock drafts, as of late, is even somebody like Theo Johnson, 6'6", this big body guy. How are you going to bring him down? Like, he's going to be a guy who just gets yards after the catch, because especially if you could put him in a position to just get him open, because I mean, the defender is just going to have to wait for essentially his backup to come help take that guy down. So I love that pick. That's a good one.
Perfect. All right. So you're back on the clock. Our original 6th round pick, not the one we got for Mac Jones. So we've addressed quarterback, receiver, tackle, corner, tight end, running back. Is it time to double dip at one of those spots?
Yeah, let's look at wide receiver. Let's look at what we got there. Thrash, Luke McCaffrey. Ooh, so I do like Jamari Thrash. I'm definitely not against him, but because we already got that like smaller, receiver, Ladd McConkey early on, 2nd round, can play the outside, but he's mainly that like elusive, quick, get open, that Julian Edelman-esque type of player, that Cooper Kupp-esque type of player. How about we take a shot on a guy that, again, in the 6th round, you're just hoping you're finding a diamond in the rough. But another one of the guys that I first fell in love with, late round pick, Luke McCaffrey, brother of Christian McCaffrey, obviously playing out of Rice. Competition level isn't necessarily high, maybe a little bit more of a developmental guy. He has the size, right? He has the size to play that perimeter X receiver. It's kind of like a Jaden Daniels thing, though, where he needs to put on some muscle, needs to put on some weight if he's going to play at that position at the NFL level. But really, really good at the contested catch. Again, gives that the Patriots that guy that we were looking for early on. Javon Baker unfortunately went. Xavier Legette obviously wasn't an option there for us because it just didn't make sense at that 34th overall pick. Here with Luke McCaffrey, again, the Patriots, they're taking a shot, but they're taking a shot at a position, at the receiver position, that they still need.
Yeah, I like Luke. He measured in 6'1" and 5'8", 198. Still ran a 4.46. I like him. He's the bigger bodied guy we've talked about wanting there, and yeah, maybe he develops into something. I don't know. I mean, you would hope that you hit. Yeah, you're taking a shot, and I like him here. And the other thing, this sounds so stupid, but I think there's something to say about guys that have an NFL family history, right? They know what the NFL's like. The legacy players, they know what it's like. They know how to work in it. They know the everyday schedule, the grind. They have family support in it. I like taking Luke McCaffrey here. Dad was there. His brother, obviously.
Athletic family, too. Just an athletic family. And, you're going to get an athlete at the very least.
And the other thing a lot of people don't think about, when you're looking at even from the 5th round down, you're looking at guys who can contribute on special teams also. Mm-hmm. And I think Luke McCaffrey can do that. He can run down on kickoff. He can be a good guy on punt return to block someone. So I agree. I like Luke McCaffrey. There's our double dip at corner right there. I don't want to assume anything, but is this not the most Patriots wide receiver core? Ladd McConkey, Luke McCaffrey? Is that not the most?
Too much sense. Makes too much sense.
Makes way too much sense, guys. We got to be somewhat
here. You could have fooled me.
Yeah. Okay. So let's look at. I mentioned I like Frank Crum. I'm not going to take him this early. I'm going to go back to. Let's look at safeties here. I know that James Williams, the other Miami safety, is more of a free safety type guy, strong safety type guy. Evan Williams is a guy out of Oregon. that I think is more of a free safety. I just haven't gotten so deep in the free safety class just because I feel like it's a need, but I don't know if it's like the top need, so I haven't really looked at that one. So, gosh, I'm trying to see. Trey Taylor's not really one there. Are there any safeties on the board that you just really like that you think would be a dude to take here?
This late in the draft, I don't think there's anyone that I'm looking at, especially in terms of like a free safety that I go, you know what? How are you still on the board? We absolutely like have to take you. Yeah, I think those guys, especially because there's so little free safeties at this point coming into the league, especially via the draft, that like I think those guys are going to go a little bit more early on. And I don't see much of those guys on the board right now. I think, it's kind of like a wide receiver, right? Like you're in the 6th round, you're kind of just hoping that you're going to get a diamond in the rough. Ideally, well, not ideally, but realistically, what's going to happen here, you take a safety, is they're probably going to contribute more on special teams year one as you try to develop them into kind of your safety.
Yeah. Okay, I agree. I'm going to go back. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go back to offensive tackle. Okay. Now I've been I've said this before. At this point, you're getting all developmental guys, but you can't teach size. You can't teach length. And there's some guys on here, Ethan Driscoll, Frank Crum, Travis Glover was a late round guy that was added to the Senior Bowl that dominated at the Hula Bowl. I'm going to take Ethan Driscoll out of Marshall. This guy's massive. He's like 6'8", really long arms. Yeah, he's very raw in his footwork and his mechanics, but it's hard to take a 6'4" guy that has 32-inch arms and make him a good offensive tackle. At least Ethan Driscoll has the size and has the intangibles, and now you're able to try to build some of that stuff. So I'm going to take Ethan Driscoll here, double dip, take a high ceiling offensive tackle, double dip there, right? You take Kieran and you take Ethan Driscoll, who if you can develop, you can find late round tackles. And if not, you take a 1st round guy next year at some point. So last pick of the draft though, right here. Okay. We're at pick, what is this? 231. So last pick in the 7th round for us. I mean, at this point, it's just a crapshoot. Who you like the best?
You're just taking anyone. You're just hoping, you know what? He'll be something for me. He'll be something. Honestly, I feel like in the 6th and especially the 7th round this year, I feel like teams are going to want to potentially like trade back in and get more picks because you're going to be paying less potentially for a 7th round, 6th round pick than you are some of these UDFAs that you're going to have to compete with and just throw a bag at in order to get them on your team. So I think that's kind of what I'm considering here. And I think you go defense here, right? So let's look at the defensive line. What do you got at edge?
Edge, here we go.
Do we have... Is Agu still on here?
Where's he play at again? Remind me.
He plays at edge. He plays edge out of for the Redhawks, Miami Redhawks.
Miami. I'm not seeing any. Miami.
They have a lot more players than PFF does.
They do. That's why I get that it's been unrealistic, but they do a better job of putting in a lot of good players. So no, I don't see him on here though. I don't know if he's not in here or if he went. Oh no, it doesn't look like he went, but yeah.
He's a good player. That's someone who, if he's in the 7th round, I would take. Again, he's not crazy, but it's a 7th round pick. But like put up 8 sacks this past year. Like that's a guy who's gonna give you some pass rush ability. Let's look at Salomon Bird. That's a guy that I think
USC. Yep.
Yeah, that's a guy that, he's played with some good competition. Again, 7th round, you're kind of just taking a shot here, but he's shown some really good pass rush ability. And at the end of the day, I think that's what the Patriots are looking for. Obviously, they want guys who are well-rounded, but they kind of have those guys already on the roster past 2024 that are those all-around guys. You have Dietrich Wise who can play inside and outside, good against the run, good against the pass. You have Keon White, same exact thing as Dietrich Wise here. So I think if you're going to potentially lose Josh Uche next offseason, you're going to lose Matthew Judon. You want a guy who's going to be able to get to the quarterback, and Bird is a guy in the 7th round who has at least shown the potential at being able to do so.
Yeah, he had 7 sacks last year, 12 QB hits, 22 QB hurries, 6'3", 251, ran a 4.6. Yeah, you're taking a chance on a guy like this that's probably not going to have a huge role like Josh Uche, but if he does leave next year, he's sat for a year, he's played some time, he's able to come in here. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I like that Solomon Bird pick right there. And that's going to round out our draft. We'll let it run through, and then we'll show you guys the final one. But what do you think so far? I mean, let's save this right here. There we go. Okay, so we do make a trade in the second round, but Jaden Daniels, Lad McConkey, Kieran Amagaji, Cam Hart, Theo Johnson, Audric Estime, Luke McCaffrey, Ethan Driscoll, Solomon Byrd. What would you grade this? I mean, it could have been better in my right. There's always guys that you wish you could have gotten, but this is pretty solid. If the Patriots come out with something similar to this or this on draft night, I think it's a solid B+.
Yeah, dude. I was gonna say the exact same thing. I think this is like a B+ for the Patriots, right? Like at the end of the day, Jaden Daniels still a great pick. You would ideally hope that guy is Drake May. You have Lad McConkey, who's going to obviously make that big impact for you. Like he's just a dude. He doesn't necessarily fit exactly what you need at the receiver position, but he's going to help you. And you, like you said, when we picked it, you just need to hit on the wide receiver position. And I think Lad McConkey is going to be that guy. Obviously, the Patriots never get that kind of solidified perimeter X wide receiver. But like I said, if they need to kind of get by, let's say Luke McCaffrey doesn't really work out for them this year, you have a guy like, KJ Osborne and Kendrick Bourne, who are very underrated at the contested catch. They're ideally not outside X receivers who are going to do it at a consistent rate, but they've been shown, or they've shown the ability to be able to do so. So you'll be able to get by for a year, especially a year in which you're not expecting to be, very competitive anyway. I think that, Solomon Byrd at the end has that potential. That's exactly what you're looking for there in the 7th round. Probably isn't going to put up, 8+ sacks for you. But, if he's a guy that can consistently at least get pressure, that's exactly what you need. Doubling up at wide receiver, doubling up at offensive tackle, I think was an absolute dub. I hope that the Patriots do both of that, doubling up at the positions that are really of highest need for you. And you need several of those guys. Theo Johnson, getting your future tight end there too in the mid rounds. Absolutely love it. Getting Cam Hart too, where you get your kind of finalized cornerback 2 outside of Christian Gonzalez, putting Jonathan Jones back in a position he succeeds, playing in the slot where he's like a top 3 slot safety when they actually play him there. So, again, could it have worked out a little bit better? Sure. But at the end of the day, it's very, very, very rare that teams get this perfect A+, draft where every scenario goes their way.
Yeah, I would say Brian says not great at tackle. I agree. I wish that, I get it. We traded down from pick 34 where we could have taken Kingsley Suamati or Jordan Morgan. You trade down hoping that one of those guys still falls there, knowing that if they don't, you're fine with taking Lad McConkey, guys like that. I would have looked at Kingsley there if he was still available at pick 38. I think it was a little unrealistic how it fell because somehow Amarius Mims still was there, but we respected the board. So that's where I would look at taking a tackle. And then me and you both said we love Javon Baker. You look at him in the 3rd or the 4th round, you still can double dip maybe a little earlier. But for me, the trade isn't so much of a big deal for me because the Patriots have to fill some roster spots. And I like the trade because it gave us an opportunity to get a guy in Cam Hart, who I think is going to be a very good cornerback too, and still get Theo Johnson, who's going to take a role at some point this year and then take over for Austin Hooper like that. So the trade, you move down 4 spots in this scenario, you miss out on the offensive tackle you really like, but then it's, also like, hey, now we're able to grab another guy in the 4th round that we probably couldn't have been able to take without the trade down. We fill one more roster spot, get one more year to develop a guy. So I mean, I think at some point they look at trading down. The trade up scenario, I know that would be awesome. Someone, Brian says, if Mims falls past 25-ish, I would also be screaming up for a trade, but then it just makes it really hard because trading back into the 1st is going to be expensive. You're going to probably have to give up your 2nd round pick and probably your 3rd. You're going to have to trade up there or a future pick. You get the 5th-year deal, but then you lose an extra draft pick. I don't know. I feel like the Patriots need to add as much depth here and as much talent. And I get it. Trading up for a guy like Amarius Mims, if he falls, is going to be very worth it, but it's also very hard and a big price to pay. But I agree. I'm excited about this whole draft class. Like there's a lot of guys that I mean, there's a lot that I'm super excited to see come. How far away are we? 12 days? 12 days, right? I believe.
Absolutely. 11? I'm not ready. I'm not ready for it, dude. Like there's so much that I still have to do. And it always approaches so much quicker than you expect it to. Like after free agency, it's like the draft's just here.
Yeah. And so Kevin says, I would be trading up. This team needs good football players. They do need good football players, and they did get good football players. But at the end of the day, too, this team has 19 roster spots to still fill. And again, don't get me wrong, quality over quantity. You don't want to take a bunch of
fifth round players. Like, you don't want to take 12 fifth round players at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, too, you trade up, you trade down, you kind of compile these picks, but you don't want this team coming out with 4 total picks, right? And you don't want one of those picks being within the top 100. You know what I'm saying? The Patriots were in a position here where they were able to get, multiple picks. I mean, they were able to keep their first pick, their second round pick, their third round pick, and still able to pick up some picks kind of in the mid rounds. And that's exactly what they're looking to do. Ideally, maybe they're even able to get another pick within the top 100, maybe the top 120. And, like we said, that's what they were able to do here. Take more shots at getting kind of those early to mid round picks, because then you're able to take more shots at these talented players rather than having to go into, let's say the UDFA class and you're picking up 15 UDFAs who, what are the odds you're going to, hit on multiple of those guys to be true game changers?
Yeah, not if it happens, then we might be in Super Bowl contention a little bit earlier than we anticipate, but it's also not very likely. So no, but man, hey, Colby, I really appreciate it, guys. I appreciate everyone in the stream supporting both me and Colby. Again, if you guys have not already hit the like button, make sure you do that. Subscribe to both Patriots Global and the Patriots Drive podcast. We're going to do more joint stuff either here or on the AFC roundtable. Maybe start another one. Best time of the year in my mind. Like, obviously real football is fun, but man, you honestly don't have more to talk about than when it's draft season. So I'm
no, dude. Yeah. Cause you can't do mock free agency signings or something it's like hard, that. Right. Yeah. Like, yeah, exactly. You can't do that.
Yeah. It's hard. So no, I'm really excited. So appreciate you coming on, man. Anything else before we wrap it up?
Nah, man, I appreciate you, of course, for having me on. I appreciate you for coming on to my channel, too, doing a little bit of a joint live stream here on both of our channels. So it's always a good time. Like I said, guys, we will be having Jace back on here on the channel for, hopefully even before the draft again, we're able to get back on for like another mock draft or some of our maybe late round steals that we could potentially be looking at. And then, of course, have him on after the draft to be able to kind of break down what the Patriots actually end up doing. A lot of good stuff in the mix here, guys, and we're definitely excited.
For sure. Well, guys, appreciate everything. Again, go Patriots. Excited to talk the next 2 weeks for the Patriots draft. And I'm sure we'll be doing more content. So appreciate it. And we'll talk to you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Patriots Drive podcast. Follow us on social media to stay up to date with all things New England Patriots. Make sure you tune in to the next episode and check out patriotsdrive.com for more great content.
7-year on to Cincinnati.